Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I, the one and only, Ray the Flying Squirrel here. And I'm Mighty the Armadillo here, and we are back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Super Mario Advance for the Game Boy Advance. So, last time, we've essentially did manage to continue experiencing the Yoshi challenge, but no matter what though, we've somehow already tackled through World 3 alongside with World 4. So today for this video is about the fact that we're going to be continuing experiencing Yoshi challenge, except this time we're about to go into World 5 and World 6. So because of that though, as a matter of fact, that we are getting very close towards the end of Yoshi Challenge, basically. Because as far as I'm aware, we've only got about 16 eggs left. So because of that, though, yeah, everything else will be pretty much accounted for. So because of that, though, yeah, before we get into more details about the forms of today's discussion, as far as I'm aware, recently about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, there is the 25th of May today. In some cases, in 2024 today. So next week, about the fact that we are about to be approaching onto the 6th month in terms of the forms of 2024, that's what appears to be June. And I'm still basically excited to know about the forms of what June is going to bring us to be. And on top of all that stuff though, we are still very curious to know what certain game announcements they'll do bring. But I'm sure enough though is about the fact that we'll let some toys else, we're able to mention more details about that and join at some point in next month. So because of that though, and also as far as I'm aware, is about the fact that we've almost nearly at the Paris 2024 Summer Olympics. So as a result, we've only got about exactly 2 months left now until the actual games begins. For the sake of the forms of Paris 2024 Summer Olympics. So because of that though, yeah, we'll talk more about that during a later time though, Mighty. Oh, why is that? Well, the reason being for this is because we've got a bunch of news we would like to discuss upon during the forms of today's discussion. And that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, first of all, for those of you probably wondering about the fact that, yes indeed, CapKing74, he's finally back into the forms of the YouTube stuff. And the reason being for this is because he recently started himself a new Let's Play, specifically LP number 29, or should I say Let's Play number 29, and actually as it turns out, he's decided able to go back onto playing certain Kirby games, specifically, that previously he did done is Kirby's Epic Yarn for the Nintendo Wii version, back in Journey Forms of in 2015, if I recall correctly. So now he recently decided to tackle through Kirby Mouse Attack, aka Kirby Squid Squad for those of you who lived in North America. So because of that though, I believe technically we've already done that game, didn't we? Well, yeah, according to the forms of matter of fact, I believe that Mario did somehow tackle for that game back in Journey Forms of in 2018, at least for what I recall anyway. So yeah, because I do remember that Sonic did somehow tell me something, that obviously back in Journey Forms of in 2018, that we did a whole bunch of Kirby games back on that particular year, and later on in Journey Forms of in the later years to come, specifically with the forms of 2020 and onwards, and it looks like no matter what though, we've already did somehow tackle through a bunch of Kirby games recently, and no matter what though, hopefully we should able to tackle something new for the sake of the forms of the Kirby games department. So because of that though, but then again though, time can tell, especially concerning for the fact that obviously if you couldn't tell, ever since in yesterday, that recently Sonic, he did recently finish up his entire Let's Play of Sonic Rush for the Nintendo DS, and overall he seemed to really enjoy that game so much, and hopefully by that time enjoying at some point later on, hopefully we should able to tackle for a sequel to Sonic Rush called Sonic Rush Adventure, also for the Nintendo DS. So we're not exactly sure when exactly though, but we'll let you guys know at some point in the future. So because of that though, and as a matter of fact though, is about the fact that, kind of thinking about it though, when it comes to able to actually notice something is that I'm very appreciative about the fact that Stuart, or in some cases CapKing74, he's now finally decided able to take a break on playing a bunch of RPG games, because no matter what though, as far as what Sonic, he's already mentioned about this several times in the past, that basically though is about the fact that he did tackle through not one, not two, but 3 RPG games in a row with that particular LPs and stuff like that, or Let's Plays as far as I'm aware. Like he did one for the sake of the forms of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, the original GameCube version as far as I'm concerned. And on top of that, with the forms of Pokemon Fire Red or Leaf Green, depending on what version of the game you're playing. And on top of that, Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix. So because of that though, and it looks like he's now finally going back onto a platforming genre ever since it drew any forms of, I would say, since Super Mario Galaxy 2 or something. Well, mind you, we haven't exactly looked upon that much of Let's Plays for his department right there. Well, that's just mainly because no matter what though, we've been busy playing through some other games recently. Yes, including with the forms of trying to able to continue playing through Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake. Speaking of which though, is about the fact that I recently discovered there's actually some very, very positive reviews out there for the sake of the forms of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake. And so far, all of those reviews are perfect in every way. So no matter what though, let's run down the list, shall we? Yeah, exactly, because we weren't able to point things out that yes indeed, we've actually able to actually have certain reviews that it did somehow received 9 out of 10 for the majority of some reviewers out there, ranging from IGN, GameSpot, Game Reactor, as well as Shack News, and Metro, and etc, etc. So yeah, everything else will be pretty much accounted for the sake of the forms of 9 out of 10. Almost a perfect 10 out of 10, but regardless of everything else though, I believe that this game for Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake is going to be receiving super duper well. Now I don't know exactly for sure of how many sales numbers we're able to actually brings us into, but hopefully we'll find out more details about that, specifically maybe at some point in August this year. But even though it's a bit tricky to tell because we've already did somehow managed able to come across into, well, you know exactly what I'm talking about with the forms of the most recent sales numbers for the sake of the forms of not only specific Switch games, but also with the forms of anything else for that resides. So anyway, and in addition to that though, is about the fact that I've noticed about the fact that when it comes to the forms of Game Informer, did somehow receive a game differently though. And that's what appears to be about the fact that they did give the game, let's just say 8.25 out of 10, which is actually not too bad. Especially concerning for the fact that after that particular massive downfall of the forms of the Paper Mario games back in Journey forms have been 2012 all the way up to, let's just say, 2020. Because, I mean, let's face it though, it's about the fact that the most infamous game out of them all though is still on a ghostly forms of Paper Mario Sticker Star. Which I think it seems pretty obvious because obviously with the forms of a weak story, and on top of that the battle system sucks. In Journey forms have been Sticker Star, and that could be also applied to the forms of, well, let's just say Color Splash and the Origami King, despite the fact I do seem to enjoy the Origami King as it is, despite the fact that the battle system is still pretty underwhelming to me, because it almost feels like a puzzle rather than just fighting enemies and stuff like that. Although you can still fight enemies and such, but the only reward you do get is of course a bunch of coins to be able to actually buy a bunch of items, which you probably already know about that. So and as far as I'm concerned about the fact that when it comes to world themes, it's pretty generic. Like you get yourselves a typical grassy lands and deserts, jungles, snowy environment, and forests, etc, etc. But I'm very appreciative about the forms of maybe a little bit on Color Splash, and the majority of the forms of the Origami King did at least manage able to actually have some unique world themes as far as I'm concerned. But as far as I'm aware, it's about the fact that nothing even compares to the forms of how it does it for not only the original Paper Mario, but also with the Thousand Year Door as well, that obviously those two games have their own unique world themes and stuff like that, alongside with the forms of Super Paper Mario as well, because obviously though one of them does manage to take place into outer space. Earlier one in Journey forms of the actual story progression, whilst unlike in the Thousand Year Door, that did manage to take place in Chapter 7 basically. So because of that though, and as far as I'm aware, for I've also found out as well, that there are some other reviewers out there that also receives not only 9 out of 10, but also with 10 out of 10 as well. Like for instance, there's the forms of Gaming Bible that gives the game 10 out of 10, and same applies with the forms of Games Hub and Player 2, and Silly Conura that also receives the game 10 out of 10. And finally, for the sake of the forms of 10 out of 10 department, which we have VGC, which is obviously pretty epic in every way. And in regards of the forms of other scores, for the sake of other reviewers out there, we've already mentioned about the forms of IGN already, but there's also the forms of Nintendo, or Nintendo, basically those about the fact that it did receive the game 9.6 out of 10, which is very impressive. And meanwhile, we have Checkpoint Gaming did receive the game 9.5 out of 10, and Press Stars receives the game 9.5 out of 10, and Giga did receive the game 9.2 out of 10, and as I mentioned this before, IGN receives the game 9 out of 10, which is obviously a fantastic move, and Comic Book did somehow receive the game 9 out of 10, and Steve Ivor did somehow receive the game 9 out of 10, and also COG Connected has received the game 9 out of 10. Game Reactor also receives the game 9 out of 10. Digital Trends also receives the game 9 out of 10. GameSpot reviews the game 9 out of 10. And on top of that, Gfinity also receives 9 out of 10 for Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake. And on top of that, My Nintendo News also receives a 9 out of 10. Screen Rant also receives the game a 9 out of 10. And finally, Nintendo Live also receives 9 out of 10. So all in all, I will say though is about the fact that the remake is gone pretty successful. Way better than the forms of how it does it for modern Paper Mario games for sure. Ranging from, as I mentioned this before, Paper Mario Sticker Star, because that game is the most rather infamous. And on top of that, with Color Splash, and even the Origami King. So because of that though, yeah, it seems gonna be, well, you know what I'm saying, pretty incredible if you ask me. And especially concerning for the fact that it did somehow receive, in terms of the forms of Metacritic, it did somehow receive the game like 89 out of 100 so far, which is all in all very, very incredible indeed. Especially concerning for the fact that I can definitely tell that this year did somehow receive some very, very good game reviews so far, ranging from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, in addition to the forms of, well, recently for Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake. So because of that though, well, usually relatively speaking now is about the fact that we still got a couple of games left, just before a bunch of new games will be announced at some point in the future. For the sake of the forms of unannounced games we haven't exactly heard of yet, and on top of that, with the forms of some other games, it still needs to be released next, which is of course Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, and on top of that, Nintendo World Championships NES Edition, and of course Sonic Cross Shadow Generations is expected to be fastly approaching at some point, but we still have no idea when does the release date. Is it going to be existence anyway? But I'm sure enough that we'll find out more about it during at some point in the next couple of days or so. So either way though, yeah, that seems pretty incredible if you ask me. Yeah, tell me about it. And there's also another thing we want to point out as well, is that yes indeed is about the fact that Splatoon 3 is about to be getting the next Sizzle season, specifically at some point in the 1st of June. So because of that though, I don't think there's anything else I can probably describe about it, apart from the fact that they did somehow mention quite a few weapons that were able to actually plan to its release. Specifically, there's the forms of Wellstring 5, I think is what it says anyway, and there's also the forms of Bamboozle 14 Mark II, and there's also Recycled Gorilla 24 Mark II, and as far as saying goes, that's as far as we can able to talk about that, and yeah, nothing else I can really add about it. And in addition to that though, is about the fact that, what I've heard anyway, that basically though about the fact that during the Evolves event this year will mark the 40 years of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the sake of the Evolves of the actual franchise as far as this is concerned, since in 1984. So yeah, I can't believe it's been about, well, 40 years since when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles did somehow exist during the Evolves of the actual franchise. So either way, nothing else I can really say about it. and that pretty much does it for everything for the sake of the forms of World 5. So now we can able to move on to World 6, where exponentially speaking now is about the fact that we still need to able to collect 6 Yoshi eggs specifically, whilst unlike in World 7 though, we have to collect about 4 of them. So because of that though, because as you probably already expect, that World 7 is going to be the shortest world in the game, just because no matter what though, it only contains 2 levels, even though despite the fact that the final level in the game is going to be pretty lengthy though, especially concerning for the fact that we have to hunt for a lot of like, not only for the sake of the forms of certain Yoshi eggs for sure, but it's also with the forms of the only mushroom you can only find during the forms of this particular challenge run. So because of that though, whilst unlike in a normal run through, that you can able to actually find not only 1, not 2, but 3 mushrooms you can able to find. So yeah, that's what I was going to be on about that anyway. So anyways though, there's also another thing we want to point out as well, is that what I've also noticed is about the fact that, well, recently, relatively speaking though, is about the fact that there are some movie sequels is going to be releasing at some point in Journey Evolves in 2025. Like, we've already mentioned about the fact that yes indeed, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is definitely going to be coming next year, and alongside with that, there's also going to be Saw 11, as well as the forms of Gun 2.0, as well as that, there's also the forms of the Black Phone 2, and on top of that, 26 years later, and there's also the forms of Insidious 6, and finally, Final Destination Bloodlines. So, yeah, that's sure it's something, I suppose. So, either way though, we still have no idea when we're gonna be seeing those exactly, but hopefully we'll able to invite, maybe Shadow at some point, but because obviously you know what Shadow is like, he obviously loves darker tone kind of movies and stuff like that, because obviously though, he's, not too afraid actually, when it comes to seeing those specific, horror movies like these. So, yeah, that's sure it's something. So, anyways though, there's also another thing we want to point out as well actually, is about the fact that, well, about time actually, for those of you who so desperately want to play those Kingdom Hearts games on the go, specifically you know exactly what I'm talking about, but that's not going to happen during at some point in the next couple of weeks. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, out of nowhere, that Kingdom Hearts, specifically Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 plus 2.5 remakes, alongside with the forms of Kingdom Hearts HD 2.8, Final Chapter Prologue, and finally Kingdom Hearts 3 plus Remind DLC, that's about time that those 3 games in particular has finally gonna be approaching into its release onto Steam at long last. So because of that though, I have no idea why it took so long to able to actually release those games on PC Steam, after being locked out during the forms of it not only for its Epic Store, but it's also with the forms of the cloud version on Switch. So because of that though, yeah, it's about time actually, that's not only for the sake of the forms of PC Steam, but it's also about the fact that if you desperately want to play those games on the go, well, you can, during the forms of on Steam Deck. But here's the thing though, is about the fact that not only is it going to be coming out on Steam at long last, but what I've heard about the fact that it's going to be releasing at some point on the 13th of June. So it might take a bit while to able to actually get to this point. So even then though, I'm sure about the fact that a lot of Kingdom Hearts fans out there are going to be super happy about this right now, especially concerning after that particular miserable failure performance for the sake of the forms of the Switch version, because obviously, like I said before, the Switch version only runs at cloud version. So because of that though, like obviously though, you know exactly what I was referring to, you know, with the forms of how the fact that it does only requires internet connection in order to able to actually get ourselves a stable experience, like that's just bad. So anyway, so let's go ahead and move on to World 6-2, and this is going to be the final time we're going to be playing as Princess Peach in Journey Forms of this whole entire run-through of this particular version of the game. And it's also worth noting for is that once we get to World 6-3, it'll be the final time we're going to be playing as Luigi, of course. So because of that though, yeah, we'll still able to actually play as Mario for last, because obviously he's the main character, of course. So anyway, and yeah, nothing else I can really say about it. Although, something worth noting for is that similar to the forms of how it does it for let's just say, for the sake of the forms of not only the PlayStation 4 version, for the sake of pre-order bonus items as far as I'm aware, but it's also the same applies with the forms of maybe Xbox, and even with the forms of the Nintendo Switch Cloud version, is that obviously though, if you do manage to actually, you know, get Kingdom Hearts 3 specifically, that's on the PC Steam, once that particular version comes out or something, that's basically what happens is that basically you get yourselves a nice little Keyblade called Dead of Night, which appears to be like a Steam-themed Keyblade, and as far as I'm aware, it's like a reskin of the forms of any other console-exclusive Keyblades, so yeah, that's actually quite interesting to say the least, so, yeah, that's all I can really think about it. And, relatively speaking now is about the fact that there's also another thing is worth noting for, is that apparently though, when it comes to the forms of how the fact that obviously Nintendo is working on the Legend of Zelda, live-action movie at some point, but, for what I can gather, that, Nintendo, or actually kind of think about it, Miyamoto did somehow says about the fact that the actual, or actually kind of think about it, I think it was specifically Sony actually, that Sony did say that Zelda movie is going to be massive, and as far as I'm aware, Miyamoto heavily involved with it. So because of that though, still I'm basically curious to check that film out, especially concerning for the fact that after seeing, you know, the Super Mario Bros. Movie so many times in the past few weeks or months, because I really can't help it for myself about the fact that I do enjoy my time watching the Super Mario Bros. Movie so many times already, because obviously with the die-hard Mario fans such as ourselves, so yeah, we really can't help it for ourselves despite how critics seems to think about it. So anyway, speaking of which though, is about the fact that unfortunately though, the Garfield movie, specifically the most recent film at the time, unfortunately though, the review scores for the critics standpoint is once again going to be pretty bad again, which I just don't understand why, but from what I can gather, it looks very promising for the sake of how that film actually plays out to be, but of course we're not going to mention any spoilers for the time being, because obviously we still have not seen a film yet, but that's besides the point. So anyway, so let's go and move on now onto World 6-3, and this time we'll play as Luigi for the final time for this particular playthrough. So, and it's also worth noting for Mighty is that this will be a true definition of the final time that we can able to actually take on Mouser. So because of that though, because, you know, you pretty much know exactly what I was going to be thinking about anyway, so I will admit it though right away, whenever I first got to this point right here, I almost got confused about the fact that where that specific Yoshi's egg was, but actually as it turns out, you need to place that potion right onto that spot, and you see that Yoshi egg right there, right between the forms of those two cactuses right there, that's how you exactly get that Yoshi egg from there. So yeah, I wasn't expecting that, but at least we somehow succeed for that point, so either way. So, but yeah, that's as far as saying goes. I think that's as far as we can talk about in terms of the forms of today's discussion, which, as a result, although there's technically one last thing we want to point out as well, is that, exponentially speaking though actually, that since you already know about the fact that Minecraft has already been celebrating its 15th anniversary recently, and for what I found out, that they're going to be bringing ourselves the actual Minecraft museum. So yeah, that's actually quite interesting. So even then though, just probably just able to actually just to look back on during the forms of in the past memories of the good old days of playing Minecraft, likely also back on during the forms of the old school computers, all the way up to the modern platforms basically, for the likes of Nintendo Switch, and even nowadays with the forms of not only Xbox Series X, but also with Xbox Series S, and even with PlayStation 5. I'm pretty sure anyway, well mind you about the fact that we still haven't experienced Minecraft for ourselves, but we definitely heard about this series already, thanks to the forms of a lot of collaborations that's been brought out, since in Journey forms have been, well, so many years ago. So because of that though, although we were still planning to get the Switch version, thanks to the forms of the Super Mario pack, because obviously though, that particular pack is so unique, alongside with the forms of the Sonic the Hedgehog's Minecraft pack as well, but unfortunately though, we just couldn't get around to it though, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though, that we've already did somehow taken care of all these pre-orders for the sake of not only Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, but also with Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, so that way we can able to give those games a shot for not only for doing Let's Plays department, but also trying those games out for ourselves on our own time, not only for the sake of the forms of the brand new experience when it comes to Banana Rumble for Super Monkey Ball, but it's also with the forms of able to actually revisiting, playing through Luigi's Mansion 2 again, except this time that you can now play the game on TV mode, and on top of that, with the forms of HD textures here and there. So because of that though, yeah, I'm sure it will be a pretty interesting experience whenever we decide to do that particular Let's Play of Luigi's Mansion 2, just before, you know, Halloween is almost about to be approaching at some point for the sake of, well, some time. So anyway, so yeah, and aside from all that stuff though, Ray, that's as far as we can able to talk about that. So we still have no idea when does Kung Fu Panda 4 DVD release is about to be coming, but I'm sure enough though is about the fact that we'll hear more about it during at some point in the next couple of days, or specifically a next couple of months or so. So either way, anyway, now we can able to take on Mouser for the final time, so no matter what though, we can able to actually just to, you know, once again toss bombs right at the forms of Mouser, and it's a good thing we did somehow choose Luigi in this fight, because no matter what though, if we did manage to able to play as Toad on this fight, it'll make things a lot more difficult. It's even a little bit irritating about the fact that the stupid spark was in the way, but thankfully though, one of those bombs in particular did somehow manage to take care of the forms of that annoying spark. So, but yeah, that's as far as I can say about it, I guess. I mean, we would have liked able to explain something else, but we've already explained well enough as it is. So either way though, yeah, let's just go ahead and toss some more bombs right at Mouser, and hopefully we should able to... Oh, he's only got one more hit left, I'm presuming so. Yeah, I would say it's likely one last hit. So either way, and there he goes, Mouser. So we're not going to see him ever again during the forms of the entire YouTube department, at least as far as I'm aware. So, yeah, there we go, folks. That pretty much takes care of everything for World 6. So we've only got one world left, and that's, of course, World 7. So this means it pretty much leads us to the final 4 eggs left. So, yeah, we are definitely getting pretty close at this point, ladies and gentlemen. So with that being said, folks, is that we get the endings of this point right here. So join me next time, or join us next time, I should say, for more of Let's Play of Super Mario Advance, is that not only we can able to tackle through the grand finale in terms of the Yoshi challenge, but also, just like the forms of how it does it on Super Mario Advance 4, we also decide to show off Mario Bros here and there. So we'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later, fellas.